Taavet.
Low. I have maybe 3 ideas what came out during those presentations. That first is maybe we are acting like slavers concerning to using AI. That was I was thinking, that we try to make AI to do something what we need an inspiration or like to do something else. Maybe in the future there will be research, you know, decolonization of AI or something like this. And I was work as a teacher, and one of my students did the research. I'm teaching video design in live performative situations, and she did the research what from her curriculum will remain after 5 years, what AI won't do better. And she came up only analog photography. That was the only thing what she got only, yeah. Because like AI can't yet move a camera in that sweet spot yet. Another thought what came was the necessity or this content, how important it is. Now that I have two thoughts are battling in my head. Like how, if it's relevant for the audience, then the medium itself doesn't matter.
Exactly.
I'm saying something, it can be really unpopular, I don't know, I'm not aware of it, but like I think what Zelensky did with Twitter channel and Telegram channel, it was like all world was basically crying for a month. I mean, like, and this is online performance. It's really unpopular thing to say, I'm aware of it, but like, somehow it came to my head. And the third thing is regarding the idea that the people in theater meet in that imaginary space, or like something what we experience together. I'm just throwing out idea, just my opinion, that maybe if there are so much make-believe and as if roles in that being a performer here on stage and being nervous, and you as an audience being there also acting as a performer, maybe like if we meet in that imaginary space, it doesn't mean necessarily we have to be in the same physical space. In that sense, if we can recreate that meeting in the imaginary space, it can also happen that people are, you know, different physical spots. So those are the ideas that came.
Thank you, Taavet. Alex.
Hi. So I guess my approach to this is that I'm a kid who grew up with a Nintendo, so I like buttons. So I try to involve buttons in my own work, and this is just a side thing because I have a political agenda as well. I really loved the term that Mikhail coined there, spectator. That is what I'm trying to make of my audience as well. I think that's very, very important. If you do anything, whether you do film or whether you do art, that you find a way to engage your audience. And in my case, that would be as a spectator. So thank you, Mikhail. I'm going to use that one in many, many dossiers. And then I loved the talk of Pauline, because I am a very known intersectional feminist. And I believe that there is a great importance in telling stories. And I believe that there are a lot of stories that are not told in this neoliberalist world. And I think technology would allow us to tell those stories and bring those stories forth. Because as Pauline says, whether you want it or not, whether we want it or not, whether the kids want it or not, technology is here to stay. And it's part of our daily reality. So it is important that we decolonize or recolonize technology and stories in that sense, and that we use it to make spectators of the spectators and to engage them to really empathize with certain stories.
Thank you, Alex. Over to you, Heidi. Heidi?
Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you, Blair. I think all of the things that you've mentioned, I totally agree with. well, maybe I disagree with your comment on the little films, but that we will talk about later. But I think one thing that is crucial really is we've got an economy of attention that we have to consider when making our art for whom. And this is very, it's a very expensive way of getting to the attention of our audience, because we are competing with major platforms like Netflix, the gaming industry, the industry of entertainment, of life on the other side that happens around there. There's not much time that audiences can actually dedicate to spend sitting in a theater or watching a performance online. And this is where I think also our task is to make this as accessible as possible, using the means that are available, and to provide the content that is actually also resonating, while still having in mind also the role of the artists to stir, to create those magic moments, but also to question and to keep thinking and pushing society forward.
Yeah, very interesting directions here. One of the things we're also hearing, not only with the work during this session, but in others, this often search for new audiences or how to engage in new ways. Airan, to you, how would you say this terminology of digital theater can potentially allow us to do that?
Well, maybe just a few things. I also like this spectacular. I mean, in all my projects, I do very large-scale participatory projects as well with thousands of people. And I call them citizen artists, so that the artists are all equal. We have professional artists, future artists who are art students, and citizen artists working together. I must say, I disagree with you completely. We are not in competition with Netflix. We can't be. If we go put ourselves in competition with Netflix, we will lose. We do theater. We do something completely different. And when film came, they said, theater, that's the end of theater, film. No. Then television came. Television, that's the end of theater. No. Internet, that's the end of theater. No. Theater is there because it's that magic moment of breathing together in one physical space, I think. That's what makes the big difference. In cinema, we're already in different physical spaces because the actors they're no longer there, but they're on the screen. But theater is a place where we sit together and share a time, and the people take that time. People were hungry. When COVID was over, I opened a festival, and we were overrun with people who said, thank God something is happening. Thank God we can be together in a space in the same time. And that's what I think we really must serve on. And never say, I was never in competition with cinema, never in competition with television. No chance in that. We have other tools, and these are the tools that we can also use, including technological tools, because I've done workshops with media artists, with kids with their mobile phones, making scenes and making films and showing them in live context and projecting them, like we saw in the project about themes, and getting the themes from the people. That's part of the participatory process, is that which stories we tell. And the stories of our urban centers are not just in Vienna, where I ran a theater. It was not just the German plays and the German language on our stage. It was the languages that we heard in the city. So that's how we create new audiences, that we tell stories of the people who matter, who live in these places, who are usually ignored by many of our colleagues. But the theater, I must stress that, this for me is so important. Theater is not in competition with web streaming services, absolutely not. We offer a completely different experience. And that is, I think, the power of what we do. And that is why we will always be relevant. Yeah. And we can't be censored because we speak it live. And that's why totalitarian regimes are always afraid of theater, because they can't censor that moment. They can only arrest us after we say it. And they can always censor a film, they can always censor a book. But they cannot censor us because we are live.
Thank you, Airan. Alex, you were talking about storytelling. Maybe if you can continue on that. Is that another way for us to consider this digital possibility?
I mean, I grew up with a Nintendo, so for me, the digital, I breathe the digital. Currently I'm seen as a millennial. I refused to identify as such for a long, long time, because I am born before the falling of the Berlin Wall. But I grew up with the internet as well. I wrote my first love letters on MSN Messenger. So, my phone knows more about me than my mother. So, yes, storytelling is part of our human nature, and since the internet is part, whether I want it or not, of my human nature, that is part of it. And for me as well, I mean, the internet really introduced other stories to me that I didn't have access to. I was from a small village. We had a very small library. I read all the books in the section that I could read by the age of 10. So I was bored. And then we had the internet. And all of a sudden, whether you were 10 years old or 20 years old, if you had something to say on a certain subject, and the thing you said was relevant, you had the space to do it. And of course, the internet changed immensely, and it's very much less democratic right now and very much more centralized, but it is still part of my generation's DNA. And I think so, for me, this is not a question whether the digital is part of storytelling. It just is part of human life. And, as you said, quoting Gerfried Stocker, that life should, or the theater should influence the digital and not the other way around. I think it's storytelling that should influence the digital and not the other way around.
Thank you, Alex.